Studiometry makes it very easy to enter your work and expenses and create invoices using those items. In this video, we're going to create a sample project and enter some work and then create an invoice to send to our client. Let's start out by making a new project. To do that, we're going to go to Studiometry's main window and go to the very bottom left and click the plus button and then select New Project. And this brings up the New Project window. So we'll enter a name and then we'll leave all these settings as is and hit Create Project. And then this just creates a blank project for us in Studiometry. There are several ways to add work to a project. You can create running timers, you can add work and expense items manually, or you can use timesheets to enter items. Let's start out by creating a running timer. The easiest way to do this is to find the project in your main list of projects and then click on the New Running Timer button. When I click that, it will create a new timer for this project based on the project settings. So we can see here now I'm already tracking a timer for this project. If I wanted to enter more information about the work that I'm doing for this timer, I could just click on it in the list here and then type in a description or some extra information, and we can also customize the rate and a lot of other information in this window, but we can just get there by clicking on it in the list. What we can see though is that the item it's both a running timer, but it's also entered now into the project's billable work and expenses section. So we're going to go there now to see what's in the billable work and expenses section. We can get there by either clicking on this row or by clicking on the menu up here and then selecting Work and Expenses. So we can see here that we have our timer that's currently running, and we'll just leave that running in the background while we enter some other work. If we want to manually add a work item to a project, we can come to this Work and Expenses section for the project, and then just down here we can click the plus button to create a new item. It'll bring up the same work editing window from before, but we can manually enter any information we want. Now there's an entire separate tutorial just to go over all of the settings in this window, and you can actually view that tutorial by clicking on this Watch Tutorial button on the bottom left. But we're going to really quickly use this window just to create an expense for the project. So to do that, we'll go up to the Type menu here and make sure that Expense is selected. Now this menu is customizable, and you can make as many different types as you'd like with built-in rates, and you can customize all of that via the Timesheet menu Edit Rates option. And there's another tutorial just going into how to use that window as well. But for now, we're just going to make sure that Expense is selected. Now the difference between an expense and an hourly item is that for expenses you have a unit price and a quantity, and for hourly items you have the amount of hours and a rate. So for an expense, this can just be a flat rate expense. So for example, if there's just a charge that we want to add to the project, we can add that very easily. So I'm just going to type in an information about a charge and then create that as an expense. And then when I hit OK, it'll save it to the project and it will add it to the Work and Expenses section. Now another type of expense that we may add to a project is something that involves a quantity. Say, for example, you wanted to enter the number of miles and the price per mile that you would charge. So to do that, we'll go back to the Add Work Item window and then make sure that Type of Expense is selected, and then we'll enter a description. And then we'll click on the Calculate Total button here, and this will allow us to enter a unit price and a quantity and some markups as well. For now, we're just going to enter the unit price and a quantity, and we can see how Studiometry calculates the billable amounts for this. So you can have Studiometry do the calculations for you if you have unit prices and quantities and markups as well. So I'll hit OK and I'll add that to the project as well. So we still have our timer from earlier and we have our two expenses on the project. So now let's say that we did some work earlier that we didn't track in Studiometry using a running timer, but we still want to add that to the project. Well, we can do that by going back again to the New Work window and then selecting the type of hourly and then entering our total hours here. But this is a lot of clicking and a lot of stuff to do just to get a couple hours into a project. So it's not the quickest way to do it. You can come in here and do it this way, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there's a quicker way to do it. So I'll cancel out of this window, and instead I'll go up to the Timesheet menu and then select Enter Timesheet. And this will let us easily add multiple work items to a project or multiple projects simultaneously. So I'll just enter in a description and the amount of hours that I worked. And then when I hit OK, Studiometry will create this line item and add it to our project. So we can see here it created one work item, and now that work item appears here in the project's Work and Expenses section. So you can see now how it's starting to work, where all of the work and expenses that you add to a project will slowly be added to this work and expenses section. And after a while, you'll want to bill for these, and that's the next step. Now, the first thing that we have to make sure before we go to create an invoice for this project is that we stop any paused or running timers. Studiometry won't allow you to send out an invoice that includes a running timer, so we'll have to stop those. So from here, if I wanted to stop this, I could actually just right-click on it and select Stop Timer, and then Studiometry will calculate the hours and the amount that are billable for that timer. And just another quick tip, if you have one or more running timers on a project and you want to quickly stop all of them at the same time, you can do that in Studiometry. I'm going to start a new timer just quickly so we can show you how to do this. But if you have a timer running for a project and you come and right-click on the project in the main window, you can select Stop Projects Timers, and that will stop all of the timers on the project, which makes it a little bit easier to bill for the project after that. Okay, so let's create the invoice for this project. To do that, we're going to go from the Work and Expenses section over to the Invoices section of the project. And then again, to create a new invoice, we would click on the plus button below the list, or we can hit Command-N or Control-N on Windows to bring up the new invoice window. And in here, we can see a few things. First, we can see all of the work items that we added. They're all showing up here under the invoiced items. Studiometry will automatically select any work items that are billable that haven't been added to other invoices. So really, if we wanted to create this invoice, we could just hit OK, and it would create it as an invoice in Studiometry. So I'll do that really quick, and then we can see that was it. So we just hit the plus button to create a new invoice, and then we hit OK to save it, and Studiometry does the rest of the work for us. Now I'm going to double click back on this because there's a few other settings that we can look at here. Now, just so you know, there's a separate tutorial for this window as well that'll go over all of the settings that you can set up in here. But we wanted to come back into this window so we can actually view the invoice. To do that, we would just click on the View Invoice button here, and then this will create a preview of the invoice using our custom templates. In Studiometry, you can customize completely all of the output and branding and everything on your invoices. So in our database here, we have 2 invoice templates, which we can see. And when you click on it and select it, it'll show you a preview of the invoice below. So it's pretty much that simple. These templates we can customize via Studiometry's Preferences window, Template section. And then we can see we have the same templates here. So you can double click on one of these to customize pretty much any aspect of it. And again, for that, we also have a separate tutorial. So if you want more details about everything that you can customize and how to set up your templates, please watch that tutorial video as well. So since we have this invoice created, we'll most likely want to send it to our client. So we can use any of these buttons up here to print it or email it or export it, and Studiometry will create PDF content that you can send to your client. So once it's sent, it will reside in Studiometry. It'll be within the project's Invoices section, and it'll also be in a few other locations as well. So for example, if you wanted to see all of your outstanding invoices, you can go to the Invoices section in Studiometry's main window. Now if this section doesn't appear here, you can make it appear by going to the gear icon in the bottom left and clicking View Settings, and then making sure that Invoices is checked. But from within this group, we can go to our outstanding invoices, and we can see the invoice that we created, the date issued, due, received, and a lot of other information about it. So this is just one way to see all of the invoices in your program without having to go to individual projects to track the invoices. So if your client sends in a payment for an invoice and you want to apply to that invoice, all you have to do is find your invoice either in the project or in your outstanding invoices section, and then go to that invoice, and really you can just check this invoice has been paid, and then Studiometry will create a payment for you, and then when I hit OK, it'll let me enter any information I'd like about that payment and add it to Studiometry. So now when we're back in the invoices section, we can see that the invoice has been paid and the date paid and that the amount due has been updated. So that's how it works. We created a new project, and then we added a few work and expense items to that project, and then we created an invoice and sent it to our client and received the payment. If you'd like to, you can see some more advanced training videos at movies.oranged.net. And if you have any questions about this or anything else, please get in touch with us at support.oranged.net.